Hey y'all, René here with a story style video, and take number 3,500. I don't even know how many takes I've done at this point. I've scrapped so many of them because they always go on too long. Anyway, let's just jump right into it. But in the background, you'll see me drawing my main roleplay character, René, in his Harry Potter AU, outfit thingy, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, René does feature a little bit in this story, but it's in his main verse in which he's a spy, and they're just only related because they're both roleplay related. Anyway, for a little bit of context, I'm a Tumblr roleplayer, and on Tumblr there are certain conventions. For example, you read people's rules pages and bio pages and stuff like that. And another thing that you do is, well, another thing that we do is we call characters muses. You'll probably hear me referring to characters as characters or muses interchangeably throughout this thing. Okay, so the story goes, someone approaches me for a roleplay, and supposedly they've read my rules, supposedly they read my bio, and they want to interact. And so I go onto my computer and I open their pages, and immediately something is a little off. See, most of the time when you, based on my experience of almost 4 years now role-playing in a Tumblr community, most people have around 5 to 6 rules pages. It's on the shortest of short rules pages, 5 to 6 rules. And each one talks about a different aspects of their role-playing comfort level. And they try to cover as many aspects as they can, as quickly as they can, you know? Except this person's rules was not really rules, it was more like threatening. They had 4 rules or something, and 3 of them were about how they would not hesitate to fight somebody, and the last rule was about how they don't bite, which is totally contradictory, and I was like, okay. Although I mean, a little while ago, I probably would have put the exact same thing in my rules, even though I actually don't fight people that much. Ooh, dropped my headphones again. That's not good. But I'm not a very fighty person. I always try to calm down before I talk to someone if I'm angry at them, you know? But okay. Because of that, I was okay, maybe they're a reasonable person, out of character. We'll keep going. So I read their bio, and I was like, okay. Their bio was it was a reasonable length, but also I don't know, their character and their traits just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It was just kind of a lot. I wouldn't fault them on that, but it was just more red flags that were going up in my head, and I guess, yeah, maybe I was a little predisposed to disliking them, but for obvious reasons, because all of these things are red flags that just spark up in my brain, because after interacting with so many people for so many years, I just kind of know, it's an instinctive thing. You just kind of know when someone may not be the best person in the world. So, yeah. And since roleplays on Tumblr are publicly posted, so anyone can read them pretty much, as long as they click on your blog, right? So I click on their blog and I read their roleplays, and I'm like, bruh, we do not write alike at all. They do rapid fire, short responses. I do slow, long responses. And I was like, okay, maybe they want to do long, slow responses, but they just haven't found a partner to do it with. And they're excited to write with me because they want to do long responses. Because this is nowhere in their rules. Nowhere in their rules do they say their response time, their response speed, etc., length, whatever. They don't say any of that in their rules page. Which, kind of important, but anyway, either way, they came to me, and I was like, okay, well, they must have come to me after making the decision that they want to roleplay with me, and they think that I would be a good roleplay partner, and I'm like, fine, we'll go with it. So I DM them, right? I respond to their DM, and I asked them if they have a plot in mind, and they say no, they don't, and I was like, okay, then do you have any expectations for this roleplay? And they're like, yeah, I want my muse and René to be friends, and wink wonk something more maybe. And I was like, okay, I don't ship, and I always plot. It's in my rules. But okay, I guess, I don't know, maybe you thought you were an exception if you read them, or maybe you just didn't read them at all. But I took a deep breath, and I was like, okay. We'll give you a chance, because it's in my rules, I give everyone a chance. Let's do the plot. I'll give you my most basic plot. They go on a mission together. Easy beginning, easy middle, easy end, right? But nope. they somehow managed to ruin the most unruinable plot ever. Like, short of, I bumped into you, oops, sorry. This is like the hardest plot in my head to ruin, because what they did is they said, René and my muse are both sent on the same mission. Reasonable, right? But no. But they don't know that the other person was also assigned to the same mission, and when they're finally about to complete the objective, they get in each other's way. So basically, they won't interact with each other until the very end. And I'm like, then what's the point of writing this if we're not going to interact with each other at all for most of the response? And since I was like that, I was like, okay, are you sure you want to do this? Because I'm a little hesitant. I've never done this kind of thing before, which, you know, implied that this is not a good plot, because the plots that I do tend to be ones that are good, because I've curated them very carefully over the years. And they say, yes, this is fine. I want to use this plot. And I said, okay, then do you want to do the starter? Or should I? Because it may take me a little while to write it, because 1, I'm slow, and 2, this seems like it needs a lot of setup. So I'm giving them plenty of chances at this point to back the F out. And they asked me to write the starter. So it's their plot. Well, our plot, I guess, at this point. But, like, they came up with the way that they came up with a way that made it nearly impossible to write a starter without it, 1, getting really, really painfully long. My original draft actually was around 800 words. I pared it down by 300 words for them, because I knew they wouldn't be able to match it. So I actually, like, pared it way, way, way down. And it requires a little bit of god modding, because I have to put their character in the same room as René, otherwise the plot would just not happen, right? Because I needed them to interact with each other, and they wouldn't even interact with each other until, like, the end of the plot, basically. So I wrote them the starter, and I said in the tags, hey, so I know I did a little god modding, I moved your character a little bit. It wasn't a lot. I just straight up put them in the room, and I said, René noticed so-and-so, or like, René noticed this figure on the sidelines. It didn't actually really even specify that it was their character. Like, it was just, René noticed so-and-so on the sidelines, like, moving towards him. It wasn't even, I was like, it was only implied that it was their character. They could have actually written their character doing something completely different in the response. It actually still would have read like normal, because this is all from René's perspective. I just wrote what he saw, or at least what he thought he saw, right? They could have said anything, quite literally, but I said, just let me know if you want me to change anything, and I'd be happy to change it. But they didn't. They just replied and said, next time don't move my character in the tags. And I was like, well, clearly they read my tags and they understood it, at least to some degree, right? Like, they'd have to if they responded to it. But a way easier way to solve this was if they approached me in my DMs and said, hey, do you mind editing this part out of your starter, or like write this part differently? And I would have said, sure, no problem. What would you like me to write instead? This has happened to me a bunch of times with a lot of roleplay partners, actually, where either I've asked them to change something or they've asked me to change something, and we were all perfectly happy to do it, because we're all human beings who are capable of enforcing and respecting boundaries. Fortunately, they were not, because apparently they are, 1, incapable of enforcing their own boundaries, and 2, incapable of respecting other people's boundaries. But this isn't even what offended me the most, actually. Because what they did is that after I spent an hour writing and editing an action-filled, engaging starter that was over 500 words long, and actually edited down to be less than the original, they spent about 20 minutes writing a response that was about 1/5 the length I gave them, and riddled with errors. Like, riddled with errors. There wasn't, like, you couldn't go more than 5 words without seeing either a grammar, spelling, or, like, syntax error. Just some, like, not, like, I'm not even nitpicking something that's like, oh, they forgot the, Oxford comma. No, I'm not even going on about that. I'm going on about they pressed B instead of spacebar. Yeah, that kind of thing that they could have caught with the most basic spell check program that every phone comes with. Needless to say, I was really pissed off at this point, and I was like, screw this, I'm gonna log off and calm down. And I calmed down and I logged back on, and since I'm a person who is Like, I'm doing my best to start enforcing my boundaries, because I don't want to force other people into the situation that I was in, where, like, someone will blow up at me because they're unfortunate, like, because I will blow up at someone because I was, like, not good at enforcing my own boundaries. So I was like, okay, I'll enforce my own boundaries, and I'll say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that it's in my rules that I require people to at least try to match my reply length. Like, if there's something wrong with the starter, you can just let me know, and I'm willing to change it, because they barely, like, even acknowledged what my starter was saying. Like, they ignored about 90% of it. Straight up. Because in the starter, there are, like, guns, like, there are, like, guns pointed at them, and, like, people are screaming, there's, like, alarms blaring. It's like I said, an action-filled, engaging starter that, like, gives you many, many options about how you want to respond to it, right? And of all the responses they chose, you know what they said? You know what they decided to do? Let's start a casual conversation. As if there are not guns pointing at us right now. Yeah. So, I was like, buddy, okay. Anyway, on to what they said. The mental gymnastics of what they were talking about. They were Olympic worthy, to say the least, and honestly, when they'll make an allegory later about a 4th grader, or like a 10-year-old and calculus, and you'll see pretty soon why this is a logical fallacy, and why they just proved themselves wrong. So, what they said, I quote, I will say, asking people to match your RP length when you're so good at writing, Y-O-U-R. Alright. For some people, like asking a 10-year-old to do calculus. Everyone writes at their own pace, and you can't think of every single detail at once. It's not my rule, it's yours. I'm just saying. Okay. I mean, that would be a valid complaint if they didn't agree to my rules. Because they could have backed out at any point after seeing that, 1, I require people to match my length, and 2, I write a lot. They could have backed out before even talking to me. So I replied, I admit, a little angrily at this point, because I was tired from the day. This was like late at night now, and I was getting tired of their behavior. So I said, quote, I understand not everyone can write a certain amount, but I also do not require any of those people to write with me. The 10-year-old cannot walk into a calculus class and demand that the teacher stop teaching calculus. Likewise, you cannot agree to my rules, then assume that one rule does not apply to you because you do not think you can meet what the rule requires. It feels disrespectful and rude for you to tell me that you cannot follow the rules that you agreed to follow. It is also disrespectful for you to not even bother to proofread your 100-word response to my 500-word starter, which I spent at least an hour writing for you, end quote. And they respond with, quote, sorry, I didn't mean to come off as rude. I'll try to match it next time. I don't have the most perfect memory, end quote. And I would have accepted the apology. I'm not gonna hold it against them for making a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes like this all the time. Like, I forget people's rules all the time. Like, I don't blame them for forgetting it once. And I'm like, okay. If they had stopped it right here, I would have been happy with it. But no. They continued. Quote, listen here, rules are fine, but telling people they have to match you and go beyond is madness. Some people just can't do that. You left me with zero room to wiggle because you broke a giant world ride. Yes, I know. They made a typo here. I think they meant to say wide. RP rule. And controlled my character. And I was like, I acknowledged this in my tags, and you acknowledged that I acknowledged it. So you clearly understood what I was trying to say. But they didn't ask me to change it, even though I said I was okay with it. So what was the problem with long rules pages again? Because this was nowhere in their rules. A lot of people have different requirements for god modding. Some people are okay with minor god modding, which this was. This was very minor god modding. I just said so-and-so character looked like they were doing something, and it wasn't even specifically their character because René did not know their character's name or what they looked like, right? And I assumed they were in disguise. But they also could have not been in disguise. They could have been anywhere else in the building, anywhere else in the room. They could have asked me about any of this stuff before this point in the conversation, but they claimed they didn't want to rock the boat or, like, make me angry. And I was like, I asked you. You need to enforce your own boundaries, please. At least I'm clear about mine. At least I'm trying to enforce mine right now, but clearly you can't even respect your own boundaries. I don't know why I expected you to respect mine. Anyway, they continue about this, calculus analogy. Quote, the kid doing calculus is in, like, 4th grade. Yes, he can learn it, but he has to ask the teacher to go easy and slow. Not everyone can remember every detail about a Word document full of rules, more than one page of rules. This isn't a major RP site that you can go to people and carve it your way. Rules should be simple, not entire Word documents people have to sign to prove they read it. It's madness, it's insanity, and downright rude and dumb. I was on the phone, half asleep. I did proofread. I don't know how to spell in general because I had a hard time learning due to my ADHD and lack of focus, bud. Not everyone there is apparently pretty perfect like you, Pally. It's Tumblr, not a boot camp. It's Tumblr, not an army. So I say unto thee, with over 200 pathetic words, au revoir, vous avez coincé, snob. Translation, goodbye, you are stuck up, snob. Or at least that's what I think they were trying to say. They must have Google translated it, because if they were a native French speaker, I actually asked a native French speaker about this, because I was like, this is clearly not what they were trying to say. And native French speaker said that this, first of all, this was wrong, and second of all, they used the formal you, which is pretty interesting, because if I was supposedly a snob and they were trying to disrespect me, they would have used the informal you. But I digress. It's just a lot. I actually woke up the next morning to this entire rant, because I went to bed before they even sent the apology. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to bed. This is just gonna make me too angry. I'm gonna go to bed, I'm gonna sleep, and I'll wake up. And they had blocked me at some point during the night, I'm not sure when, and so I didn't even get a chance to respond, which I guess was probably for the better, because I was really angry when I read this. I was like, you are a really entitled human being. Now, we don't have time to unpack all that, but what I can say is that they should not be asking me to bend my rules for them when they're the ones coming to me. You know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, all that, right? Like, I understand a little bit of compromise, but when it comes to enforcing boundaries like this, especially clear-cut boundaries that have already been expressed multiple times, like, you should be entitled to enforcing them. I am entitled to enforcing my boundaries, which they broke multiple times by first of all, not reading my rules carefully enough, because they were breaking them before we even started role-playing, and I didn't point it out because it was just not egregious enough for me to point it out yet at that point. I was just like, okay, we can deal with it, right? But it was like at this point that I was like, okay, I cannot take more of this much rule-breaking. I just need to tell them something, right? And like, the thing is, they didn't tell me anything, and that was kind of like, what really gets me about this is that, like, I'll never understand why they were just spouting excuses, and bad ones at that. Like, I really do not care if they are unable to meet my standards. I really do not care if they only write 100 words at most. I don't care if they don't know how to spell for whatever reason. I just ask that they should be able to recognize their own boundaries and their own capabilities, and that they should recognize that their boundaries and capabilities are extremely different and therefore completely incompatible with my boundaries and incapabilities. This is just a basic human skill. You should be able to recognize when and where someone is going to be like a good, in this case, I guess a friend or something, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't go into a rocket science lecture and attempt to lecture rocket scientists on rocket science, because I am an artist, not a rocket scientist. I know almost nothing about it. Like, I wouldn't go in there and try to lecture them about it. Likewise, they shouldn't, like, to continue using their fourth grader analogy, if they're a fourth grader walking into a college-level calculus classroom, they should not be asking the teacher to slow down for specifically their sake, because they're in a class with college-level students, right? Like, I actually was in a calculus class that accepted freshmen, like high school freshmen, right? Because there were like these exchange students who have taken like a ton of ton of higher level math classes, and this student entered the class, and you have to take a rigorous number of tests to get into that class. The reason? Because the class will not slow down just for you, because you are purposely putting yourself, who are already at a disadvantage, into a hard class that you are not supposed to be in. That's what they were doing. They were in a class that they were not supposed to be in the first place, and they were asking people to make it a place for them when they were not supposed to be in there in the first place. Like, that's what made me so angry. I'm not angry that they, like, didn't put any effort into their response. I'm not angry that they, like, didn't even use basic spell check. Oh, well, okay, I am angry at that. But, like, I wouldn't fault them for having ADHD, or I wouldn't fault them for not being able to write as much as me. Everyone writes different levels. I can't write novella. I mean, it's just way too much for me. I can't write that. But like, in turn, I would not interact with a novella role player. Like, I would say, oh, cool, you're really great at writing. I admire your writing, but we wouldn't, like, even if they approached me, I would say, I don't know, are you sure you're okay with this? I won't be able to write as much as you do. I'm like, I'll be upfront about it. I'll inform them that I won't be able to follow their rules, and if they tell me they're still okay with it, then I would be like, okay, fine. But that's only if they approach me. I wouldn't even approach them in the first place. Like, at least not in like a writing capacity. Maybe I'd send them a message saying, like, complimenting them on their writing, saying, oh, you're a really good writer. I love the way you write. And they'd be like, thank you. And I'd be like, and that would be it, really. I wouldn't ask them to write with me. I wouldn't expect them to write less just for me. Like, that's just entitled behavior. It's like those entitled parents who go into a grocery store 5 minutes before closing and ask you to stay open another extra 30 minutes for them. That's kind of what it felt like here. They're asking me to break my rules for them specifically when they came to me in the first place. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So, a lesson for all of you who, like, out there who roleplay. Just, roleplay requires compromise, yes, but when you approach someone, you should be aware of your own capabilities and be aware of their capabilities as well. And this is part of respecting your roleplay partner. Like, I would not go to them in the first place, because I would not expect them to write as much as me. I just wouldn't approach them. I would just, I don't know, even if I was interested in their blog and I saw them and I read their responses, and even if I liked their blog, which I didn't actually, but even if I did like their blog, I would read their responses. I would see that they don't write as much as me. And if I like them enough, I would break my own rules. And I would say, all right, I'll write less for you. Or I would say, you do not need to match me at all, period. I would just break my own rules for them. Because I would be going to them, and in their rules, or they didn't have any rules in this case, but if they did, I would follow them. So, that's the lesson I'm trying to impart on you guys here. And honestly, I've done so many takes now that this is just gonna be my final take. I'm done. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this story. I might do some more roleplay story times eventually, or go back to doing some other, like, commentary style videos, which hopefully won't last as long as this one did. So thanks for watching. Hope this was engaging, and if you're interested in hearing more of them, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.